Today we're going to talk about the latest Senate debates and the Republican candidates' disastrous performances. And I have two big interviews this week. I interviewed Georgia's Democratic nominee for governor, Stacey Abrams, about Brian Kemp's efforts to position himself as a moderate, the impacts that the Republicans' voter suppression law is having right now in Georgia, and what she'd do on day one as governor. And I'm joined by former federal prosecutor Glenn Kirshner to discuss the January 6th committee's subpoena for Trump, what his options are now, and what the punishments could be for ignoring it. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen, and you're watching No Lie. So we're now just a few weeks out from midterms, and debates have kicked into high gear. And so because of that, we've got moments like these. Here's J.D. Vance in Ohio.
Yeah, so I've come out against this bill, and I don't think it's actually about gay marriage. It's not about same-sex marriage or same-sex equality. On the Lindsey Graham bill, my view on this is, generally speaking, Ohio's going to want to have different abortion laws than California, than Texas, and I think Ohio should have that right. But some minimum national standard is totally fine with me.
Here's Ron Johnson in Wisconsin.
And in response to the wild charge of Lieutenant Governor Barnes, the FBI set me up with a corrupt briefing and then leaked that to smear me.
I'm sorry.
He is referring to corruption with the FBI, which I've been trying to uncover and expose.
All right. So, do we have time for, please, audience, please, we're trying to get through these. We have time for one more question?
It has cost us more not to complete the wall that we already contracted for than to actually build it.
All right.
And here's Herschel Walker in Georgia.
One thing I have not done, I've never pretended to be a police officer, and I've never threatened a shootout with the police.
Well, and now I have to respond to that.
We are moving on,
I
gentlemen.
have to respond to that. And you know what's so funny? I am work with many police officers, and at the same time,
Mr. Walker, Mr. Walker, excuse me, Mr. Walker. Please, out of respect, I need to let you know, Mr. Walker, you are very well aware of the rules tonight.
Yes.
And you have a prop.
Yes.
That is not allowed, sir. Yes. I ask you to put that prop away.
Well, it's not a prop. This is real. And he said I have a problem. I never worked with law enforcement.
It is considered a prop, Mr. Walker.
Yes.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
You're very well aware of the rules.
And just so we're clear, that is Herschel Walker, a grown-ass man pulling out a fake police officer badge to try and convince everyone that he's a cop because someone handed him that badge. Please, dear God, no one give that man a stethoscope. And what I think is kind of amazing, just from a 30,000-foot view, is that, 5 minutes ago, this was the party of Lincoln. These people were grandstanding about the Constitution and the rule of law and respecting the police. And now, the GOP's nominees, the best that party has to offer is a guy who thinks he's a cop because he was handed a toy badge. It's a doctor who made his fortune hawking goji berries. It's a far-right evangelist who rose to fame on the backs of the people who've suffered from the opioid epidemic, now scratching the backs of the same executives who caused it. I know that we've spoken about the extent to which the GOP has put its fealty to Trump above everything else and how we say it so much that it's almost lost its meaning, but just look. Look at the candidates that he recruited. These people wouldn't be there if it wasn't for him. These are his nominees. He put his finger on the scale in every single one of these races. Just a clown car of snake oil salesmen and D-list celebrities. It's legitimately like an episode of Celebrity Apprentice, except if these guys win, we all lose. It's us who lose our rights. It's us who lose Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. It's us who lose our ability to fight climate change. It's us who lose the ability for the government to negotiate lower drug prices. It's us who lose that $2,000 cap on drugs for seniors. And I know that our gut reaction when we see people like Herschel Walker and Dr. Oz is to laugh because they're clowns and they say stupid shit. And we can laugh because it's better than pulling our hair out. But what we can't do is be complacent, or more importantly, just assume that everyone else knows who these people are. Which brings me to the most important point here, and that is that most people don't know who these people are. Most people don't follow this stuff. You watching right now are this tiny subset of the population who is engaged. And if everybody was like you and knew what was at stake in a few weeks, we'd all be better off for it. I had a conversation with a friend a few days ago who is getting her PhD, and she is so not clued into politics that she called me and said, okay, explain this abortion thing to me like I'm 5. She's getting her PhD. So 2 things here. The first, as I've said before, is to be responsible for your circle. I could reach every human being on the planet, and I still wouldn't have the impact that you do in your own personal relationships. So use them. Talk to your friends or your family who don't vote, or if people are on the fence. Remember, the difference between Biden's win and a Trump win in 2020 in Wisconsin was 3 votes per precinct. That's it. If Trump was able to flip 3 people per precinct, he'd have won. Christy Smith in California's 27th congressional district lost her race to Republican Mike Garcia by 333 votes. Every vote matters, so please do your part. And second, when you talk to these people, don't make it about your political party. Forget your team, forget your tribe, because people who don't pay attention don't care about political party. They don't have any allegiance to any political party. They care about how it impacts themselves. So just focus on that. Ask them, do you want abortion to be banned nationwide, or do you want abortion to be protected nationwide? Do you want Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security eliminated, or do you want Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security to continue? Do you want climate change to be ignored, or do you want climate change to be combated? Do you want the law allowing the government to negotiate lower drug prices repealed, or do you believe that the government should be able to negotiate lower drug prices? If you want any of the first things, tell them to vote for Republicans. But if the second thing is what it is, then tell them to vote for Democrats. It is as simple as that. This isn't about serving a politician or their party. It's about those politicians serving us. So we need to vote based on where we stand. Okay, I'm going to show clips from this week's interviews with Stacey Abrams and former federal prosecutor Glenn Kirshner. But first, another announcement. I'm still selling wine. It's a rosé called Codify Rosé. Yes, I'm proud of the name still. The profits are going to an amazing voter registration organization called Field Team 6. They registered 1.5 million Democrats in 2020. They're able to register new voters for $1.50 per person. And with voter registration deadlines upon us right now, this is when your money goes the farthest. So if you want to help support voter registration and also drink, because God knows we need it, follow the link right here on the screen or go to my website, briantylercohen.com, and follow the link for Codify Rosé. Also makes a great gift, so buy 1, 2, or more. Now here's a clip from my interview with Stacey Abrams. Brian Kemp has positioned himself as a moderate in this race based on his interactions with Trump. Is he?
No, Brian Kemp is a far-right extremist who, until January of 2021, called himself a Trump conservative. And his behavior actually reveals much more than any rhetoric he's leaning on today. This is a man who in his first year in office banned abortion in the state of Georgia after 6 weeks. In order to win a primary, he weakened gun laws so much so that we've seen a 23% increase in gun violence. He slashed $1 billion from education. He has refused to deploy $400 million for affordable housing, and he refuses to expand Medicaid and provide healthcare coverage to 500,000 Georgians, not because we can't afford it, but because he doesn't believe they deserve it. These are the behaviors, the actions, and the principles of a hard right conservative. One act of not committing treason does not change the narrative or the reality of who he is.
And here's a clip from my interview with Glenn Kirshner. The biggest piece is that they voted to issue a subpoena to Trump. What are Trump's options here?
His options are to defy the subpoena, which I fully expect he will do. And then the ball is in the J6 committee's court. They can do a couple of things. One, they can vote to hold him in contempt and make a criminal referral to the Department of Justice for a contempt of Congress charge. We know they've done that before, and it's met with mixed results, right? They did that for Steve Bannon and Peter Navarro, both of whom were indicted by the Department of Justice. They did it for Mark Meadows and Dan Scavino, neither of whom were indicted by the Department of Justice, which I find a little bit offensive because the co-equal branch of government, Congress, was a victim of the crime, the contempt, and yet for whatever reason, DOJ sort of turned up its nose, at least thus far, at the prospect of charging those other 2 men for committing precisely the same crime that Bannon and Navarro committed. So they can do that, though I suspect that is less likely than their second option, which is to pursue civil contempt in court. What that looks like is they will file suit in court to enforce their subpoena. And that will put Donald Trump in a position where he'll have to go to court. He will have to respond. In my opinion, he will absolutely lose the court battle, and then a judge will order him to testify. If he defies the judge's order to testify, as opposed to just defying the subpoena to testify, a judge can actually order that he be detained until he purge the contempt and appear and testifies. Now, what will he do if he is ordered to testify? We already know, Brian, we will now all be back on the hamster wheel of endless appeals. Although at least the courts seem to be expediting the court hearings, and they're not letting Donald Trump run out the clock. And of course, the Supreme Court just rejected his attempt to pull the court into the Mar-a-Lago documents debacle. So right now, I think at the moment, things are looking up a little bit on the justice front.
To watch the full interviews with Stacey Abrams and Glenn Kirshner, click the thumbnails right here on the screen or check out the interviews playlist on my YouTube channel.